And the basis of this cause to all of our suffering are greed, hatred, delusion. So the quick fix to greed is, in very simple terms, generosity. Now, you don't have to specifically take any form of real action, but just generally giving, even if it is just giving some attention, listening to somebody who requires company, or smiling at someone. But if you can give someone something, that someone's in need, give them some food or something like this, then you are practicing and developing the quality of Dāna, the Pali word we use for, which is generosity, giving. And by that very nature, whilst there is generosity, this nature of giving in your heart, you cannot have greed. You cannot feel greedy when you're giving, because it's the juxtapose, it's the paradigm, it's the opposite, it counteracts, it is the antidote. So that's the quick fix for greed. When you feel yourself wanting a little bit more than you should be having, or buying a little bit more in the January sales than you really need, think of whom you might be able to help. It doesn't need to be financially or materialistically, but just with your support, a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, or just a smile, or just a conversation. Some people may be feeling the effects of loneliness and haven't found the Dharma, aren't meditators, but would like to have just a conversation. You don't have to be that interested in the conversation, just listen. It's nice to do that sometimes because it's a way of giving. Now, us monks, we can't give much, but each and every day we're required to go on Pindapata into the local village or town, wherever's nearby. We do live, I live in solitude. This is my practice. It's one of the Dutanga practices we're allowed to take up. But even then, we must live within walking distance. So that's really a maximum of about a mile and a half to 2 to 3 kilometers from the nearest village or town, in order that we can walk into that village or town each and every morning, not asking for anything, but with our empty bowl, and then just naturally people out of that generosity will offer food. And I was reminded of this morning on Alms Round, once again, as I am every day. For the last year now, I've been here for a year, over a year, but living in this particular place, going on exactly the same Alms Round route each and every day, seeing some of the same faces every day. I would say about 20 to 30 of the people offering food to me. And that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? And it is. And of those 20 to 30, some of those are groups of people, little families, or a few people who wait at the same bus stop each day, or even people who drive and collect tickets on the bus, who stop their bus, jump off the bus and come and put something in my bowl. Then in addition to that, there's probably another 10. So it's usually 30 to 40 encounters each morning I am having by way of interaction with people, with other human beings, with fellow Buddhist practitioners and others on that road as I go from my home here, where I stay in this little empty building, this kuti we call it, into the village to collect this food and return. I have an abundance, I have more than I need. But what I'm giving is primarily the opportunity for those people to exercise generosity, and therefore by that effect eradicate greed, one of the most difficult of these three kilesas, we call them, the defilements, these three poisons, these aspects of our human nature that we have to overcome, eradicate completely in order to become enlightened. So an arahant, a fully enlightened being, has no trace of either greed, hatred or delusion. They are gone. There may be still some human traits of a very subtle and almost undetectable nature, but the core essence of greed, hatred and delusion is gone. And this is what we're looking to strive towards in order to become free from suffering in this lifetime. So monks, nuns everywhere, going on pindapata, the Pali word, as we call it, alms round, are giving that opportunity to everybody. And it never ceases to amaze me, the smiles on those regular faces and new people that I come across each day, 30 to 40 people, or more than that when it's groups and families. So, but 30 to 40 stops where I have an interaction. There's no conversation. I don't speak the local language. So I still remain, in effect, practicing and in solitude, even during that interactive activity with other people. It is an exchange of my gratitude and acceptance of their offerings and my giving of them the opportunity to offer something to me, to sustain me in my practice for another 24 hours. They know, as I am bound by my rules, that we don't store food, keep food overnight, so I have to do this whole activity the following day all over again, because we can't keep all the excess food in the fridge and cook it up later on in the day. We only eat once a day before noon, and we can't store food overnight, and we can't cook or prepare our own food. Of course, we're capable of doing so, but this rule is in place to maintain that interaction of monks and nuns with lay practicing men and women. Is very important. That's what has maintained the stability of Buddhism in these Buddhist countries and established the success of it throughout the world over the last 2,568 years. Unchanged in terms of its rules and its basis and the way it was set up from then to date. There's been various versions that have come and gone, but the core Sangha, the body of noble beings, monks and nuns in the direct lineage from the Buddha, his original Sangha, has remained intact and very strong and very evident in these Buddhist countries, but also now throughout the Western world, the modern world, all over the country, all over the globe, all over the planet. And one very fundamental aspect of that is the dependence of monks and nuns on lay people. So as much as we seem to be away practicing in solitude for our own development, we're offering back through that practice this opportunity to interact with others, as well as visitors. I receive many here in the kuti of an afternoon. They come from, well, all over the world really, but also local people come to ask questions and talk with regards to their practice of meditation and other problems that they may have in their lives with regards to, and not just problems, things they like to celebrate in their lives. This morning I met some people who were celebrating, a couple, their 59th wedding anniversary, and every day they put something in my bowl. And this is just the most wonderful exchange of, not conversation, their son was able to explain that, but not a conversation, but the exchange of feelings, generosity, gratitude, all of the positive things we have as qualities in our lives. And that is all the groundwork we need to support our eradication of greed, hatred and delusion. So the antidote for greed is giving, generosity, Dāna. Now the antidote for hatred or aversion is its opposite, which is mettā. The quality of mettā is the Pali word, but loving kindness. Developing unconditional loving kindness for all beings. Admittedly, that does take perhaps more effort, a little more mental determination than generosity, because generosity can be very, at first, perfunctory. But if you start at first even in a perfunctory way, just giving because you feel you should, eventually you will get such a good feeling from doing it, you will want to give. There should always be joy in giving, and there is. This is that time of year, isn't it? And you've experienced it recently, you know. You wouldn't be doing it repetitively every year or more often than that if it wasn't enjoyable. So with Metta, however, we're not all naturally walking around saying peace and love to all beings. Some of us might even have aversions to many other beings, or, you know, when I'm saying beings, I'm referring to everything: humans, dogs, cats. In my menagerie here, there's the usual kind of animals we're used to, dogs and cats who come and go. At the moment, there's little kittens who come jumping around like little bouncing balls all over the place. Without the mindfulness I've been so happy talking about that the older cat has, who moves around so gracefully. But also, yesterday we had monkeys. They have these black and grey, quite large monkeys. I suppose about half my size, I suppose, jumping around in these trees here, the papaya trees, the mango trees, the coconut trees. We have peacocks, we have these warrens, which are big water monitors, which are like big, huge, big lizard things that are about 2 meters long, and many other creatures all are wandering around. Of course, snakes as well that we're scared of. The building there next to me, which is an old, empty, ramshackle, dilapidated building, often out of the little door comes slithering down the steps what are very venomous snakes, a cobra yesterday I saw, but I pay no attention to them anymore because they leave me alone. I think they know I'll leave them alone. They're free from fear. Animals generally only cause any other beings harm out of fear for their own safety, as generally humans are protecting their own goods, their own assets, their belongings from theft, or their own physical selves from harm by way of any form of physical aggression or violence or that kind of activity. This is why a general sense of adhering to those 5 precepts is such a good foundation for a world, an existence of peace and love in that kind of vein, in that kind of sense. But we're not all born like that, and some of us have to develop it. So you hear of metta practice, and this is where in meditation you take the opportunity to remember those near you, those far away, those you like, those you don't, and you kind of list in that perfunctory manner at first as if you are sending metta to those people, but we're not really sending it, we're developing that quality of loving kindness in yourself. If you are mindful, if you're practicing, and everything boils down to mindfulness, but if you're practicing mindfulness in all of your daily activities, you will see that by consciously developing metta as a quality within yourself, and this is no better developed when you're dependent, as monks that is, dependent on others for your well-being. I'm dependent on everybody else for my food each day, my clothing that I'm wearing, these robes, and my shelter each day, and any medicine that is required each day. Without the support of others, I would not survive, in order to, not even necessarily to the following day. We need to eat, usually, most of us, each and every day. Maybe a few days, but then life would get very difficult. So I'm dependent on others, and by that very nature you forge that relationship, and it is an easy environment to develop metta. So you can begin with those you love. You should begin with yourself. You should begin with having loving kindness towards yourself. And this is the practice, which I've spoken of in much detail in many of these talks, so I won't dwell on now, because I just wanted to emphasize the antidote to aversion, and that is love, loving kindness. And then finally with delusion, which is not ignorance, that's another word, that's avijja, vijja being sort of intellectual knowledge more than let's say the opposite of delusion is common sense. So delusion is confusion. It's you may have all of the technical knowledge in your mind, in your thinking brain, but no real practical application of that technical knowledge. You may be in that respect deluded. So we don't just know the Four Noble Truths and know the Noble Eightfold Path. We don't just read and recite the suttas. We understand them and put them into practice.